Blog Talk Radio.
Are you ready to take a bite out of the competition? Are you looking for ideas to make your business better? Welcome to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet, sponsored by Apple Capital Group. At the core of every successful business, you'll find people making a difference. And with each episode of the Core Business Show, we talk with those people, examine those ideas, and explore the strategies that make them special. Now, the host of the Core Business Show, Tim Jacquet.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Core Business Show. I'm Tim Jacquet, your host. Today I have the pleasure of having a guest, Everte Farnell. We're going to talk about Libertarian Voice on the recent debate. If you'd like to join the conversation, feel free to go ahead and pose a question in the chat room or call us at 347-334-3460, or you can email us at info@thecorebusinessshow. Everte, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me, Tim.
I guess to begin with, tell us about yourself. I get a lot of personal stories, so mind, just take a moment and tell us where you're from and about you.
Sure. Well, I'm from Florida. I'm one of the, we used to joke that I'm one of the few, the proud, the natives down here in Florida. But I was born down in Fort Lauderdale and grew up in a hardcore, staunch Republican, dyed-in-the-wool Republican household. And when I got into my mid-20s, I started looking into opening my own businesses. First it was as just an independent contractor for other companies, but treated as my own business, and then it kind of grew from there. And as I started running businesses, real businesses with employees and this kind of stuff, I started realizing what a nightmare government interference was in the business world, and how really what it did is it literally just squashed businesses. It kept businesses from starting, and the businesses that were there, it kept them from expanding, which of course it has negative ramifications across the board. Not as much people are being employed, jobs that aren't taken advantage of because businesses can't afford to hire people because of regulation, etc. So I kind of drifted away from the Republican Party. The more I realized that they were part of the problem, they're just the other side of the coin as far as the statist is concerned. And I started realizing that they're doing the same thing the Democrats are doing. And that's kind of how I found libertarianism. I've always been kind of a political junkie. And now with, now that I have really understand what political philosophies are all about, I've really landed as a staunch libertarian. As if not only philosophically in that a lowercase L is what they say, but also as a member of the Libertarian Party.
Well, kind of tell the people who don't know what the Libertarian Party is. Tell us what they're all about.
Well, basically, the Libertarian Party says the government should stay out of anything that does not involve the violation of your rights. So, I mean that's obviously the very broad brush Reader's Digest version. But if you're doing something, you have the right to do anything that you want as long as it doesn't violate anybody else's rights. So you don't have the right to steal from somebody. You don't have the right to take from them by fraud or by force. You don't have the right to force other people to do something. So, for example, obviously slavery is wrong because that's using force to force other people to do work that you want them to do. However, the right to contract is, so if two people enter into a contract, it's completely, the Libertarian Party says government should be completely out of that. They don't have any right to stick their nose into that sort of thing. Agreements, what happens between two adults, government doesn't have any right to stick their nose into that sort of thing. What you want to put in your body, whether it's much of Mayor Bloom, whether it's a supersized Coca-Cola with extra sugar added, or whether it's marijuana or some other drug, that's your business. It's your body. Just don't expect me to pay for it. Don't expect me to cover the ramifications of your decisions. But you can do whatever you want to your body. So these things are, we just think that government, if it doesn't involve violating somebody else's rights, government should not be involved in it at all. The reason government is there is to make sure that your rights as an individual are not tromped on or are not violated by somebody else's action.
Okay. It's always known when it comes to education, liberals really don't think the government should tax individuals on anything. Is that still the same case, or that's not really the case? We got to have, in order to have anybody to govern us, we have to have some type of ways of paying for it. And taxation, it seems like it's the only way that should work.
Well, there's obviously, there's a broad range of opinions under the umbrella of libertarianism. So, for example, let's take something that a lot of libertarians are also objectivists. So they're also adherents to Ayn Rand's philosophy of objectivism. Now, Ayn Rand said that the government should be run off donations so that it doesn't dare do something that the people don't like, because then literally we can immediately starve the government of money so that they can't do what we don't want them to do. I don't know that I agree with that. I think that's a little too far, and it opens up, obviously, for very successful people to make large donations and then the government to pander to certain people over other people, and that's a problem. I do think that there has to be some taxation. It's a necessary evil if we're going to have a government. However, if we had real money instead of a fiat currency, and if we had a government that was the size that it's supposed to be instead of a bloated behemoth of a government, then taxation would be so nominal that nobody would mind it. Everybody understands that if something's coming in, there might be a tariff. But for the first 150 years of the country's existence, the government supported itself on tariffs and on sale of public land. So a sale and rental and use of public land. So it's not really necessary to have an individual income tax except for two things. Number one, the size of the government. And number two, the fact that a certain amount of money has to be taken out of circulation every year. Otherwise inflation will go crazy because it's a fiat currency. So they keep printing money. Well, they gotta skim that money. They gotta skim a certain percentage of that money out of the economy. Otherwise the economy goes nuts. So it's a combination of the two. So yes, we do have to have some taxation. However, the taxation does not need to be to the level that it is, or now they're talking about making it higher. It's not necessary. If we followed good, real solutions, solid money, I mean, look, a dime used to buy you. There was a time in the country when a dime would buy you a gallon of gas. Well, today, obviously, a dime won't buy you a gallon of gas, but silver that they used in that dime. So if you took that dime and melted it down to just silver and then sold the silver, that would buy you a gallon of gas. So think about that for a second. That's the difference in money. People say, oh, well, the good old days when a dime bought you a gallon of gas. Well, what the dime was actually 0.09 ounces of silver. And 0.09 ounces of silver will just about buy you a gallon of gas today. I might have my numbers off a little bit. I don't have a calculator, so I apologize if my numbers are off a little bit. but the example is true. So solid money in a smaller government, taxation would not have to be what it is. And I don't think anybody would object to paying a little bit of taxes on this or a little bit of taxes on that to make sure we had a functioning government that would defend our shores, not go nation build, that would protect our rights. So if somebody breaks into the house, we have police who will come and make sure that person is apprehended. Obviously, there's several different levels of government. It's when it starts getting, overbearing that people get upset.
Well, you talked about your business. You mentioned that at the top of the hour. What type of things that you feel that's really regulating that's hurting business today? All this regulation you mentioned, both sides of the parties.
Well, any regulation hurts business. And when it hurts business, it's something that many people understand. When businesses are hurt, then workers are hurt. See, so this is not, I've known a lot of business owners, and I have yet snidely whiplash. Of all the business owners I've met, and I've known, entrepreneurs I've known, I have yet to meet a guy who's snidely whiplash, who sits in the back room and laughs about how he can steal from orphans and widows and gets out there with a whip and smacks on the back of his employees. I have yet to meet that guy. Here's the truth. The free market increases, it increases the level, and this ties into the answer, so don't think I'm going off on a tangent. The free market increases worker circumstances far better than government regulation ever could. So, for example, if you look at the graph, workplace accidents, since OSHA was enacted, it looks like OSHA did a magnificent job of reducing workplace accidents. But here's the truth. If you back that graph up 50 years, you find that it's the same slope. The same slope, exactly the same slope was happening before OSHA came into effect as after OSHA came into effect. The free market was already increasing workplace safety. Same thing with unions. If you look at when unions started coming around, and you look at employee wages, well, it's the same slope. If you back that graph up, it's the same slope. The free market handles these sorts of things. So what happens when government gets into that and starts regulating it, it hurts both sides of the equation. Business, every time business has to pay a little money to meet or to comply with the regulation, then that's money they don't have to pay employees. That's money they don't have to do advertising to generate more business. That's money they don't have to increase operations or to do training. And when they can't increase operations, when they can't do advertising, and when they can't hire more employees, then the net result is less jobs. And less jobs equals lower wages for the people who are working, because a lot with wages is supply and demand. So I have somebody working for me that I'm paying $25 an hour to do a job, and there's another guy over here who's been out of work for 6 months and is more than happy to do the exact same job that this person's doing, only he'll do it at $15 an hour because he's been out of work. Well, now I can replace my $25 an hour person with a $15 an hour person. Well, that's no good. For what the ideal situation is that I have enough business, my business is expanding enough that I can bring the guy aboard maybe $20 an hour and give him a chance to get some raises. But if I can't do that because of government regulation, then I'm going to swap them out. So wages are suppressed because of government regulation, because it reduces employment. Employment is suppressed because of government regulation, because the company has to spend more money on keeping up with on hiring professionals. For example, taxes. It's a nightmare every year to do taxes. I got to hire a CPA to do taxes for my different businesses and my personal taxes and everything else. It costs me thousands of dollars to get everything done, and it's an absolute nightmare. And I don't have any idea whether he's doing it right or not. I'm hoping he is. Knock wood. I hope to hire somebody I trust. But
do you think
you see what I mean?
I mean, yes. Do you see there's an imbalance? Because I think if you're a large company, you can absorb those fees that are just nominal. If you're making $10 or $100 million a year, then it's weighted differently. Then you need that person in order to save you money. However, for small business, that's when it becomes real taxing. If you're only making $250 a year, you pay your accountant $25 to do your taxes in order to save you to bring your tax bill down, then it hurts. However, the top end of that, with large companies or mid-sized companies that makes a lot of money, can afford to do that. However, I think what happens, they just some of them go off the deep end. And usually I'm thinking, which I agree with you, I mean, then the government comes in and stumbles on because, they can't trust them to do what they're supposed to do the right way. They end up taking shortcuts, doing this, that, or doing things that they're supposed to do. Then we have to put something in place to kind of protect the public. Do you see that as kind of like at one extreme or another? The small business owner who's trying to make it, do the right thing, and have to hire an accountant to do all the things to get every break you get. Then you have the larger company who's taking advantage of making it difficult for everybody else.
Well, here's what I would say
about that. Okay.
I would answer your question with a question rather. Name one large corporation that you talked about, 100 million, 200 million, 500 million, that does those kind of revenues and does not do business with the government. You see, these businesses are that big and they do that kind of work because they do business with the government, because the government is.
We'll have to go. We'll be back. You listen to the Core Business Show.
You're listening to the Core Business Show, sponsored by Apple Capital Group. Apple Capital Group in Jacksonville, Florida, is a commercial lender that specializes in asset-based loans, equipment leasing and financing, invoice financing, commercial real estate loans, and asset-based financing in the U.S. and Canada. Apple Capital Group is a direct lender that lends on their private equity investment portfolio. 90% of most loans are decided within 2 hours, and vendor funding within 24 hours after documents are completed, with a one-page application. No slow no's, just a quick decision and a fast yes. To get more information about lending from Apple Capital Group, call 866-611-7457. That's 866-611-7457 to speak with one of our loan specialists. Or visit us right now at applecapitalgroup.com. Welcome back to the Core. Once again, here's Tim Jacquet.
Okay, we're back, and we're going to talk about our topic, which is the Libertarian Voice on debate. Everyone, go ahead and continue.
Okay, sorry about that. Technology. But what I was saying is that companies get that large by doing business with governments. They do business with people who are friends of theirs who are in the government, and then they use that money to buy pull and to buy influence that allows them to do more business with people who are government, people in the government. And of course, the government uses force to get its revenues, and then gives contracts to companies that it has some sort of dealings with. For example, Halliburton. The contracts Halliburton got under Bush, which I understand were perfectly legal. However, the vice president, Dick Cheney, had been a former executive at Halliburton. So this was a contract that clearly, I'm sorry?
Yeah, I think it was the chairman, wasn't it? Or the CEO?
I think he was the chairman. He was the CEO or chairman. It escapes me at this moment exactly, but he was a real high-level, he was definitely an officer of the company, real high-level executive. So this is a situation where you got somebody who's getting a contract from the government based almost for sure on the relationship with somebody who's a high-ranking member of the government. So my point is that I understand what you're saying about at some point companies get so big that maybe there's some regulation that's necessary. Number one, I would say that the free market and a free press will handle that better than any regulation ever. And number two, I would say that if it wasn't for a bloated monstrosity of a government, then companies very rarely would get that big anyway. There are numerous monopolies. There's no such thing as a monopoly unless government enforces the monopoly. So your local cable company has a monopoly for your area because the government enforces. They purchase from your local government, county or city government, the right to maintain a monopoly in that area. There's no way to have a monopoly. All these antitrust laws are ridiculous because it's impossible to have a monopoly unless government enforces the monopoly. Otherwise, you can have competitors. The minute you start charging too much money, the minute you start treating your customers poorly, the minute that people are not satisfied and don't want to work with you anymore because they don't like the direction you're going politically or they don't like the direction you're going as a business, then in the market, you have competitors crop up, and those competitors can steal your business. That's what happens, believe it or not. There's guys or companies that thrive when Walmart comes to town. There's a bunch of them that close down. Most of them close down. Most of the small businesses close down before Walmart even opens. They just roll up their bag and give up. Put up the white flag and I'm going home. The companies that stay there and that work figure out a way, and there's all these little companies that are feeding off of Walmart's different areas. So there's auto centers that do wonderfully when Walmart comes to town because it pulls more people. So even though there's a Walmart auto center, people don't want to do business with the Walmart auto center. They want business with the auto center, with a local auto center. So they go over there and do business with them. These kind of examples are everywhere. And in a market, regulation is handled by you and by me and where we spend our money. As opposed with the government, regulation is handled by somebody in an office somewhere who doesn't have any idea about the specifics of a situation and wants to enforce on everybody involved in that situation a ruling that they give from on high. And number one, I kind of resent that. And number two, the economy is not something that you run, and of course businesses and consumers, that is the economy. The economy is us. The economy is not some big machine somewhere. So you get businesses and consumers who are interacting with each other in the way that they want to interact, and that forms the economy. Central planners come in and they view the economy as a chessboard or a checkerboard where they move people around the way they want to move around. But you can't do that because that's not the way it works. You let it go. It's a natural system. And you let the natural system flow, and you will find that it will work perfectly fine. And it will protect everybody involved, and it will make sure that, it might not work in a month. It might be a couple of years before an inequity is resolved, but the market will handle any inequity that comes up. The only thing that you got to keep out of the market is physical force, because that distorts the market. And of course, that's what the government's for. So if I don't want to do business with you, then I can't force you to do business with me with a gun. But that's what the government does to people. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's shift about the debate real quick. Are Libertarians really supporting Romney, or they're supporting the president themselves?
Well, for libertarians, and of course I don't speak for every libertarian in the world, but
Okay.
I can tell you that the libertarians I know, and me included, are not supporting Romney at all. You got Romney, you got Obama, they're the exact same picture of each other, just wrapped up in a different suit. I mean, it's the same guy, just with different gift wrapping on him. And I'm not particularly interested in assisting to put somebody in the White House who is a statist. And this goes for either one of them. It's not just, I'm not pointing to Romney right now, but they're statists. They'll erode civil liberties. They'll continue to devalue the dollar, and they'll continue wars abroad, which are going to further hurt our economy. I won't assist in putting any of them, either one of them, in office. I think the only two ways to really approach it are, number one, go and vote for somebody. Do a little research. There's a few quote unquote third party candidates out there, and of course third party is a name that is given to any party other than the major two. But research the candidate and decide which candidate really is going to represent your thoughts best, your beliefs on where the country should go best. And nobody's gonna agree on every item in a platform perfectly, but the overarching vision of where the country's going, you want to vote for the person who has that vision, that you share that vision with. And I guess if that's Romney or Obama, then okay, I can't, it would be anybody. But I understand some people, but vote. So that's one way, is to vote for somebody who shares your overarching vision. The other way is just don't vote. Don't take part in a system that is geared towards a false choice. So what they've done, they meaning the political machine, the Republicans and the Democrats, they have created a false choice. They've said, they've created a vacuum that says your choice is only Darth Vader or Satan. Which one do you want? Now, depending on your point of view, you can decide which one's Darth Vader and which one's Satan. But either way, basically, you're voting for one who's less bad than the other one, the lesser of two evils. But you're still voting for evil. And, I heard a great line a few weeks ago, and I've asked several Romney supporters this, and nobody can give me an answer. No, they just kind of shrug. And it's this: without making reference to the president in any way, shape, or form, explain to me why you want Mitt Romney to be president. And nobody can do it. Nobody can give you a real answer. It's always, because Obama, because we can't have another 4 years of Obama, because Obama has these policies, then that's Darth Vader or Satan. So you gotta, when enough people wake up and stop worrying about quote unquote wasting their vote and start saying, you know what, I'm going to vote for the person with whom I have the closest shared vision for the country, then we'll get some real change in the country.
Why do you think, sorry to go over, about 15 years ago we had Ross Perot, was a real strong candidate, and he backed off somewhere in the middle of the election. I can't remember what was something with his daughter. I don't know if she was sick or something was going on, but he dropped out temporarily. But he had the momentum to be a very serious third-party candidate until he decided to campaign temporarily for a couple of months for a family issue, and then he got back into the race. Then he lost that particular momentum. Why, since then, over 17 years later, he hasn't been able to get a real good third-party candidate into place? Because
Ross Perot scared the hell out of him. Ross Perot them to death. Ross Perot, Ross Perot was going to win. He was going to win that.
Yeah.
He was going to be our president, and he dropped out of the campaign, and then he got back into the campaign. Now, some people say the reason he got back into the campaign, and this timing with getting back into the campaign, was specifically designed to help ensure Bush didn't become president. And maybe that is, maybe it's not, I don't know. But even with that lapse, he still got 20% of the popular vote. That means 1 out of 5 voters in the country voted for Ross Perot, even though he dropped out and said, I'm out, and then, I'm back in. And, and he was doing the hokey pokey with the presidential race. Now, that's a tremendous number. Since then, Jesse Ventura ran for governor in Minnesota a few years ago. And they let him into the debates, and they opened the door to him and let him be a quote-unquote serious candidate because he was completely independent. He didn't have any party behind him, and they kind of laughed, this guy will never do anything. And he won. Scared the bejesus out of these guys. They can't. So what they've done is they've locked down everything. We don't have a viable third-party candidate because they've put the clamp down on everything. They know that the people are not happy with the way the country's going, more so today than they were when Ross Perot ran. They know that if they let somebody in the door, that they're losing power. So they've locked and barred the doors and put chains on it and put armed guards outside. And they're doing and I'm speaking metaphorically, obviously, but you're saying that they to make sure that nobody gets a real voice, because they want to make sure a little bit of a voice, just enough to satiate the people who are, people like me who are kind of political junkies and are real serious about it. Just enough exposure to bleed a few votes off of the person who they want to bleed votes off. You notice how Libertarian candidates traditionally bleed votes off of the Republican side of the ticket, whereas like Green Party candidates traditionally bleed votes off of the Democratic side of the ticket. Well, you notice who's getting a lot more press these days, Gary Johnson or, now I'm drawing a blank, Jill Stein, I believe she's a Green Party candidate. Who's getting more press? Well, why are they getting the press? Well, I think at least part of it is because the liberal media is saying, look, we want to give just enough press to Gary Johnson so that people will know who he is and he can bleed some votes off, but not enough press so that he becomes a viable candidate, because they want to see Obama get reelected. Now, of course, like I said, to me, it doesn't make any difference who gets reelected. It's the same thing. Philosophically, they come from the same place. But they've locked and barred the doors, and they said nobody's allowed in, and we don't want to let anybody in, and we don't want to have anybody but this false choice, but this BS choice that we set up for you, and that's all that you're allowed to see. But we're starting to realize that there is somebody behind the curtain. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Well, we out of time. I really appreciate the information. We got 2 different points in this episode. We went twice as long as we thought we would, but again, I really appreciate you coming and sharing your voice and sharing your with us. Thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you, sir.
Again, this has been another show. Thank you all for listening. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet. For more information about equipment financing and asset-based loans, visit our website, applecapitalgroup.com. That's applecapitalgroup.com. Or call us at 866-611-7457. We hope you'll join us for our next episode. And remember, you can always get to the core via iTunes. You'll find all our previous episodes there. And thanks again for listening to the Core Business Show with Tim Jacquet.